I don't know what's going to happen. I'm 92 years old now. I don't know if you knew that. But my life has kind of been a paradox, really, because I've gone from one thing to another, almost all by accident.
There are some people who know how to tell a story, and then there are people who have become a kind of keeper of stories. Jim Paulk is one of those people. He remembers names, towns. He remembers the way a room felt, the way someone laughed, the way a chance meeting changed everything. He's a man who loves telling other people's stories, but this time I asked him to tell his own. And that was not always the easiest place for him to stay, because Jim's life has been full of movement, from Georgia's red clay roads, a boyhood shaped by war, a dream of Annapolis, and a submarine under the water, to a career, a family, and a marriage that would last 60 years. And somehow, through all of it, Jim kept saying yes, even when he did not know where yes would take him yet. I'm Heather Holt, and this is Change Happened, Then What? Part 1 of Jim Paulk's story. The story of a man who spent a lifetime listening, leading, laughing, loving, and carrying other people's memories. But before he could tell me about everyone else, I wanted to know about him.
I was born in 1933 in the depths of the Great Depression, and we lived 10 miles outside of town in a small community of maybe, 20 families or so, not very many. And then we moved to town when I was 4 so that I could go to school, because the school buses didn't run out that far. So I kind of grew up as a country boy, and I've been a country boy at heart all my life.
1933, the Great Depression, before the world became fast, and there was something about the way Jim says this that does not sound sentimental. It sounds matter of fact. This is where I came from. His family lived outside of Brunswick, Georgia, in a small community where school buses did not reach yet. But before moving to town, the first landscape stayed with him.
I grew up in the woods, hunting and fishing and outdoors, and played sports with all my friends, and so that's kind of what my childhood was like.
It's quite simple when he says it, but inside that sentence is a whole world. A boy in Georgia, hot afternoons, the smell of water and trees, a childhood built around outside things. And even as his life would carry him far away from that small place across the country, he never really stopped being that country boy, not in the ways that mattered.
My dad was, yes, he was in the Coast Guard in World War II. When I was basically in the 6th grade, almost all the young men in town were in the military. They either Navy, Army, or something. My dad was in the Coast Guard during the war, and all of my uncles were, I think, pretty much in either the Army or the Army Air Force. And at the time, there was no separate Air Force then, of course.
When Jim was growing up, war was not an abstract thing. It was everywhere. It was in the adults who left town, the rationing, the empty shelves. It was in cars sitting on blocks because there were no tires. And it was in a little boy planting a victory garden.
Because as a little boy, we played like we were in the military. We were either flying an airplane or doing something in the military. We even designed an obstacle course, so we were going to be rangers, and it was just, everything was about the war.
And then the details get a little more vivid, because Jim remembers what total commitment looked like, not as a headline, but as a child.
We had rationing. You couldn't get gas, couldn't get tires. A lot of people had the cars up on blocks because you couldn't get tires for them. The shelves at the store were empty of a lot of things, and a lot of things were rationed and not available. But we were involved.
He remembers collecting newspapers, searching vacant lots for scrap iron, doing his part because everyone was doing their part. There is no performance in the way he tells it, just a memory of a time when a whole town seemed pointed in one direction.
I had a victory garden in an empty lot in town, and the man that lived next door to the lot let me use a hose to water my little garden. We called it the victory garden.
That little garden says so much. A boy with his hands in the dirt, a neighbor's hose, a country at war, and a child learning early that you show up where you can, even if what you do is small. Brunswick was changed by the war. A small coastal town became something much bigger when the shipyard came in. People came from all over the South. Traffic filled streets that were never built for that kind of movement.
People, and they built war apartments on every vacant lot in town, and traffic was unbelievable in that little town. But we were totally in the war. We had a blimp base there that was going out looking for German submarines, and sometimes the depth charges that dropped would make the windows in your house rattle because of the bombs going off offshore. It's kind of the way I grew up.
That is not something most of us can imagine. A childhood happening in the same breath as world history. And maybe that's where part of Jim's story began. A boy learning that service was not just something adults talked about. It was something everyone lived inside. And Jim was no different. His dream was the Naval Academy. But the dream did not open up right away for him. He did not get an appointment right out of high school. So he went to North Georgia College, a military school in Dahlonega. Then Jim was in the middle of a golf game somewhere in Georgia when a friend came running toward him.
When a friend came running out of the golf course, said, Jimmy, your mother just called. I said, what did she want? He said, she didn't say, but she wants you to call home and get home immediately. And I said, wow, I'm not walking off the golf course in the middle of a match. So I called her, and she said, you have an appointment to Annapolis. And my dream came true.
This was one of those moments in life when everything turned on one sentence. You have an appointment to Annapolis. The doors opened, the future rearranges itself, and a boy from Brunswick, Georgia, who had been waiting and hoping and trying, arrives in Annapolis with 1,160 young men.
And then I was meeting everybody, and it seemed like everyone I met had graduated valedictorian from their class. They had been president of their class, and they were captain of the football team, and I'm thinking, I was none of those things. What am I doing there?
Then he says something I think almost anyone can recognize, even if you have never stood in a room full of people who seemed brighter, stronger, and more prepared.
I felt like just an average guy.
From listening to Jim so far, he is anything but average. But here is Jim, looking back at 92 years old after a lifetime of leadership, service, love, writing, and storytelling. And he still remembers the feeling of arriving somewhere and wondering if he belonged. there is something deeply human about that moment. Maybe most of us carry some version of it. That private question, what am I doing here? But Jim did belong, not because he thought he was the most impressive person in the room, but because he knew he was not.
I was in awe of my classmates. I've never been around so many unbelievable, talented people in my life.
Some people walk into extraordinary rooms and spend their lives trying to prove they're extraordinary too. Jim seems to have done something a little different. He noticed the people around him. He remembered them. He honored them. And decades later, he would still be telling their stories.
The people on submarines are just the most compatible people you will ever find, and they're also very, very smart because they have to know, each one has to know every system on the boat in case of emergency and people get hurt. They have to know the other person's job.
Jim served on a World War II submarine. He held several roles, and he trained enlisted men and younger officers who were still learning the boat.
Back in the boat we were in was a World War II submarine, and I served several different positions. I was electronics officer, and then I was communications, and the best job I had was engineering officer, when about half of the people on the ship reported to me, and we kept the boat going, and I was the chief diving officer for the submarine, and I was also responsible for training all of the enlisted men that didn't have their dolphins yet. They weren't qualified, and it was my responsibility to see that they were trained, and I also trained the younger officers on the boat too.
As always, when Jim talks about that time, he does not make himself the center of it. He talks about the people and the relationships that lasted.
I had great chief petty officers that I valued, and more than anything in the world, they were just the greatest people and the most talented people.
This is one of the clearest threads in Jim's life. He can talk about accomplishments, about titles, or he could talk about work or awards in leadership. But his voice warms most when he talks about people.
And 3 officers that I'm still in contact with, and we communicate. They follow me on my Facebook pages, and I hear from them and almost every week, and some almost every day. And so it's amazing how we stayed in touch, and we had reunions, and we all got together.
And then he says the thing that feels like the center of him.
To me, is the most important thing in the world is relationships, and of course love is the ultimate relationship.
Because before Jim's books about relationships, before the stories about other people and finding love, before the wisdom he would later offer about being ready, there was a young woman named Pat. But before we get to Pat, Jim had girlfriends. He tells those stories with a kind of mischievous honesty.
She was like Scarlett O'Hara. She was beautiful, but she was a handful. And I'll tell you what she told me. She said, "Jimmy, I'm not hanging around 4 years while you go to Annapolis. I'm going to Georgia and find me a husband."
She told Jim she was not going to wait around while he went to Annapolis. She was going to Georgia to find a husband. And years later, Jim found out she had found more than one.
About 25 years later, I was at a wedding reception, and I love to tell that story because it was so doggone funny. And he said to me, he said, "Yeah, she's found 4 of them." And I said, "Well, I guess I dodged a bullet on that one."
This is the kind of story Jim loves to tell. The kind with a little turn, a laugh, a little timing. But then he gets to Pat, and his voice changes. A friend invited him to the University of Delaware. His friend's girlfriend fixed him up with 3 blind dates. Number 1 and number 2 may have been perfectly nice, But number 3, well,
my classmate, a good buddy, invited me to go over to the University of Delaware. And when I went over there, his girlfriend at the time, Sheila Cunningham, had fixed me up with 3 blind dates. Now, number 1 and number 2 were great, I'm sure. Pat was not my socks off. I had never met anyone as impressive as she was.
That is a whole love story in 2 sentences. Pat did not immediately seem thrilled about being involved with someone in the military, but Jim convinced her to come down to Annapolis for a formal dance. She took the train from Newark, Delaware to Baltimore, then a bus to Annapolis. She had to find her way into this enormous world of uniforms and rules and buildings and midshipmen.
And I was going to meet her on the steps of Bancroft Hall at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. And so when I went to the steps, I said, oh, I can recognize her.
And then there she was.
So when I got to the step, there was this beautiful girl sitting on the steps, and she had a sweatshirt with Delaware in block letters across the front. And she wanted to make sure I found her.
There are some images that feel like they belong in a movie. This one does. A young woman on the steps of the largest dormitory in the world, a sweatshirt with block letters, a young man looking for her in a sea of uniforms, and then this line.
But we looked at each other and we smiled, and I think our souls met at that point.
It could sound too much if anyone else has said it, but from Jim, it does not. Because he lived 60 years with her. Because he is still saying her name with reverence.
She's been gone 9 years now, and I still tell her I love her every day because I do.
There is no need to decorate that. It's enough. Jim and Pat had built a life across places. California, Georgia, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, moves, careers, and ordinary days. He went from the Navy to Procter & Gamble, where he worked in manufacturing and management.
I was a manager, and my second job there was a manager of a liquids department where we made Joy and Ivory liquid soap and Downy fabric softener.
I still use a Downy fabric softener today, in the little round ball with the Downy blue pull stopper that only opens up on the rinse cycle. I can't even begin to know how many years I've been using the same ball. And when I asked him what he meant by making soap, he explained it the only way Jim would. Joy, Ivory, Downy, Tide, Cheer, a collection of ordinary things that have quietly lived in people's homes for generations. Things we reach for without really thinking about who made them, how they were made, or the people behind them. That feels like a good place for me to tell you about one of the people helping make this season of change happen, then what, possible. This episode is sponsored by Pure Energy Apothecary, a small Vermont business creating handmade products for everyday care. One of my favorites is their magnesium butter. I spend a lot of hours sitting behind a microphone, editing stories, moving tiny pieces of sound around until they feel right. And sometimes my shoulders remind me exactly how many hours that's been. Pure Energy Apothecary's magnesium butter has become one of those simple things I keep nearby and I reach for as part of my own routine. If you'd like to learn more about Pure Energy Apothecary, and the products they make, visit pureenergyvt.com and use code PURECHANGE at checkout to get your 20% off today. Thank you to Dawn and the entire Pure Energy Apothecary staff for supporting Change Happened, Then What, and helping me continue to tell stories like Jim's. From soaps to submarines, back to Jim's story.
P&G is a wonderful, wonderful company, and it's a great people. And again, it was, to me, everything was always been about relationships.
Again, people. That's where he always returns. He does not linger on the prestige of his job. He remembers the people, the work, the teams, the relationships. And maybe that's why, even when he talks about his life almost happening by accident, it does not sound random. It sounds relational. A person asks, a door opens, a need appears, and Jim says yes. There was a moment in our interview when Jim says something that feels like the thesis of his own life.
My life has kind of been a paradox, really, because I've gone from one thing to another, almost though by accident. I haven't really planned to do all the things I did in my life.
Almost by accident. That is the phrase. But when you listen closer, it doesn't feel like an accident exactly. It feels like availability. Jim was available to life, available to opportunity, to service, available to love, and available to the next thing that asked something of him.
I've been so blessed that I always said yes, because I always felt like I owed this world so much, because I'd been given so many different things, and I owe everything to having gone to the Naval Academy.
Jim Paulk is not an easy person to summarize, and maybe that's the point. He is not one story. He is many. A Depression-era childhood, a wartime boyhood, a Naval Academy dream, to a submarine officer, to a husband who still speaks of his wife every day, a man who moved through life with humor, gratitude, and an instinct to notice people. This is only the first part, because after the Navy, after Procter & Gamble, and after the life Jim and Pat built, another unexpected chapter was waiting. One that would pull Jim into a marine conservation, California politics, artificial reefs, and the lives of people whose stories he believed deserved to be remembered. But before we go there, I keep thinking about that young man arriving at Annapolis, looking around with all those extraordinary people, wondering if he belonged. Then, decades later, becoming someone who would spend his life reminding other people that their stories mattered. Maybe that is one of the quieter forms of love, to listen closely, to remember generously, to tell the story well, and maybe, even now and then, to let someone turn the microphone gently back towards you. I'm Heather Holt, and this is Change Happened, Then What? Part 2 of Jim's story will continue next week. Until then, I hope you notice the stories being handed to you. Today's episode was written, edited, and produced by me, Heather Holt, with minor supervision and more than one interruption from Waylon and Dalton. If there was anything in today's story that made you smile or reminded you of a story you needed to hear, Please take a moment to leave a rating or a review, or share this story with someone you know. You never know when the next story may change someone's life.
The oak must strain against the storm to shape its roots and harden form. The heart must break to learn its beat. The loss must burn to make us sweet. The climb must hurt to lift the soul. The fight must forge the shining whole. So welcome wait and call it grace. No progress blooms without the brave.